The stream is live.
Right. Yeah, we're live now. This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV on YouTube, and I have none other than WWE Hall of Famer, former WCW commentator, wrestler, has held multiple championships, including the AWA World Heavyweight title twice, and he is by far the most famous ever Western States heavyweight champion, none other than the living legend, Larry Zbyszko, all the way from Florida.
Well, thank you, Hannibal. Thank you for the intro.
So you were just telling me before we went on, we haven't really heard you do too much commentary in recent years, but apparently you're going to be doing commentary for a new company that some of the people involved with this is former UFC Hall of Famer Pat Miletich, Gerald Briscoe, former right-hand man of Vince McMahon. There's a lot of big stars in this, and now you're going to be the commentary. King of Connecticut is putting it together.
Yeah, Matt, the King of Connecticut. But they called me about a month ago, and I'm very excited about it because what it is, it's called Shoot Pro. And you can Google, I guess, shootprowrestling.com. And what it is basically, it's a resurrection of the ancient sport of submission wrestling. It was big in the Egyptian Empire thousands of years ago, and then it was big in the Roman Empire, and it was the Romans who turned it, submission wrestling, one-on-one wrestling, into a real physically brutal, bone-breaking, brutal sport, one-on-one sport. And it's a pure sport. It's the art and science, the art of setting guys up to hook them, and the science of human anatomy, so you know how to grip somebody that can't be broke, so you know how to break someone's arm, how to pop someone's shoulder out. I mean, it's brutal, and it's a pure sport. There's no punching, there's no kicking, there's no eye gouging, and I'm going to be doing the color commentating along with the King of Connecticut, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited about it because it's basically an ancient sport that's been lost for thousands of years that's now coming back to television. It's not professional wrestling, it's pure submission wrestling.
And many people don't think of you as a quote-unquote shooter, but you never put yourself over, but some people feared you a little bit in the back and that was one of the reasons I think they trusted you with the AWA title in those days. You could handle yourself if people were trying to try some funny stuff on you, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had a good amateur background. I was a great amateur. I had some martial arts background. But when I started in 1973, there was still older guys around, Carl Gotch. There was a guy I met in Vancouver in 74 or 5 named John Foley from Wigan, England. And these guys were like the last of an era of pure shooters. They knew how to hurt you, how to break an arm, pop a shoulder out. They'd set traps. I mean, they wanted you to try to take them down. They'd hook you on the way down. There's an art to it. So I learned from a school of guys from an era before me of, the art of shoot wrestling.
Did anybody ever try anything with you in the ring?
No, not really. My reputation preceded me, and I never had any trouble with anybody in the ring except one time I broke a guy's leg, and I felt bad about it, so I never hurt anybody again. But in the old days, and I was in California, and the LaBelles had the territory, and Leo Garibaldi was booking it for him. But in the old days, you'd have guys from the neighborhood and the fans that would annoy the hell out of the promoters. I want to get in the ring. Make me a wrestler. Put me in the ring. And they would annoy the hell out of them. And they had them in every territory. So the promoter, in this case, Leo Garibaldi, said, Larry, there's a guy down the block. Get in the ring with him before the crowd comes and just stretch him, get rid of him. So I said, okay. And that was a thing that was done years ago. So I get in the ring with this guy and I look at him. And he's like 6'6", 290 pounds. I'm going, oh my God. And I wanted it over quick. So what I did was an old shoot move where you go in, dive in, you put your hand behind the man's ankle and your shoulder hits him in the kneecap. And when I did that, I could hear his knee pop, pop. And he went down backwards like a big oak tree. And I felt bad about it, and I never hurt anybody again. But what they would do is the promoters wanted it that way because then they would go back into the neighborhood and say, hey, these guys are real. This professional wrestler guys, these guys are real. Look, he broke my leg. So it was good publicity in a sick way for the old school promoters in the old days.
I know Harley Race was one of the guys they would often send to do that, to rough up the fans a little bit and leave a mark. Do you have any Harley Race stories? Because I know you guys crossed paths a lot over the years.
Well, I knew Harley. I mean, not a lot because we did so much traveling. I didn't know him well, but Harley was a tough guy. In Florida, they had a Japanese guy, Harold Matsuda. I think was one of the guys that could really hurt you. Bob Roop was a specialist when it came to the sugar hold and popping someone's shoulder out. So there was, a guy here and a guy there in the old days that were shooters and knew how to hurt you. And what Shoot Pro is again, the resurrection of an old ancient sport where there's no punching, there's no kicking, there's no poking in the eye, there's no ropes to jump off, no chair. I mean, it's strictly man against man submission wrestling, and you're either going to win or you're going to go off to the emergency room. It's a brutal, tough, old school sport, and I'm excited about doing the color commentating and not being in there because I'm too old to get hurt. So
that kind of ties into this fan question from Doug here. Do you still lift weights? I know you're getting up in age a little bit, but your dad's still alive. He says in his 20s and 30s, got harder and harder to work out, and in his 40s, it stopped being fun.
Well, what I do is, because I mean, my bench press record when I first started, I weighed like 245. I bench pressed 465.5 pounds. That was my record with the 1 second pause. But now at 73, what I do is I do isometrics and I stretch out, but I don't do any more weights or anything that's going to hurt my joints because I've been one of the lucky ones. I don't have any artificial parts. I don't have any artificial knees. I don't need any surgeries. All the friends I got left that are still living have artificial knees, screws in their neck, artificial hips. So what I do now is, I don't run and do treadmills because I'm not hurting my knees, but I do stretching out and I do isometrics that don't hurt the joints, but get the muscles, moving. So I just don't lay there, but I've really slowed down and don't do anything to put myself in a hospital, put it that way.
Mike says he loved it when you threw Eric Bischoff to the Giant for him to choke slam in WCW. Do you have any memories of that? And how's your relationship with Eric now? Because I know he was kind of testy for a while there about you in relation to how much you had to do with the creation of the NWO.
Well, I guess so. Eric's a smart guy, and he had people around him. And he was smart enough to know what a good idea was and what a bad idea was. But what happened was, and I even did some podcasts with Eric and somebody else, and Eric admitted it. I'm the one that when the New World Order was just starting, like Scott Hall was about to come in and all that. I was doing the commentating and I was saying, oh my Lord, we're going to have in this business a new world order, which was in my mind because I'm a student of ancient mythology and the new world order that's happening for real on this planet. And when Eric heard it, he said, yeah, that's the name we're going to use. That's the name that I like. So I influenced the name, the New World Order. And then when Scott Hall came in, they had some ideas, but I changed the ideas and told Eric, oh, why don't we do this? And Eric thought about it and said, yeah, that's a great idea. I wish I would have thought of it. So I wound up basically not naming it, but influencing the name, the New World Order. And I'm the one that programmed the way Scott came in, and then Nash and Six Pack or whatever. And then Eric, it got so hot, Eric wanted to get involved. So I programmed things where me and Eric wound up in the ring with a match to save Nitro from the New World Order, and then me and Scott Hall, because people were dying to see it. In fact, if I remember right, the two buy rates for pay-per-views, the one with me and Bischoff and the one with me and Scott, were two of the biggest buy rates WCW ever did.
Are you surprised that Scott ended up passing away so young? Because I heard DDP say he kind of relapsed the last 2 years of his life. I mean, he was up and down the whole time, but it seemed like he was making the turn for the better.
Yeah, he was trying. And he was here a lot, and he lived close by. And he was a good guy. I mean, when he was sober, he was a cool guy, a smart guy, creative. I mean, you could see how he could create characters like Razor Ramon and made the bad guys cool. But he had this demon, and he tried his best, but then he couldn't stop it. He was just so self-destructive. I know I tried. I know DDP tried. And I was kind of shocked because Scott wasn't old. I knew he had demons, but I just never thought he'd die that soon. I mean, he couldn't overcome the demon. He couldn't do it. It's sad.
Yeah, and now in wrestling, there's less of that, but it seems like they're just not hiring those type of peoples in general. Like those wrestlers will still be around, but they'll be on the indie scene. What do you think of the hiring practices now where it's very PC and corporate overall for the people that they're looking for, whereas before they had some fairly normal people like you, but for the most part it was the outcasts of society that couldn't necessarily do a regular job?
Yeah, well, it wasn't they couldn't do a regular job. They didn't want a regular job. I mean, when I was growing up, my dad, who was an international tax accountant for U.S. Steel, would be up in the morning with a suit and tie going up and back, the 9 to 5 rush hour. And I just didn't want to get involved in that. And professional wrestling got in my blood, not because it was on TV, but it had to do back then with the good guy versus the bad guy. And the good guy always overcoming the bad guy. It was good versus evil. And nowadays, I mean, I'm not that familiar with the exact hiring practices, but the one thing you have to admit when you watch, whether it's SmackDown, Raw, the newbies on NXT, trying to climb that stairway to heaven, the WWE is a great company, and it surrounded itself with all the talent in the ring are amazing athletes. And I don't know what their mindset is, if they're after the fame. But in my day, what was, the old timers, Bruno and Strongbow and Monsoon and Skolin, they would drill in your head, we're doing this, not a long-term career because you can get hurt, but we're doing this to make the most money we can. And the WWE being such a great company and a big company, if you make it to Raw, SmackDown, you're going to retire a millionaire. But the one thing they look for, and I see on TV, is everybody in the ring is an amazing athlete. And they're doing amazing things, even though they happen every match with the flipping and crashing through tables and running. But they're really all amazing athletes, and they work their butts off for the fans.
One guy that I think is still with them as a trainer in some capacity, who I think you're friends with, even though he has heat with a lot of people, is Terry Taylor.
No, Terry.
Yeah, is he still working for them? And why do you think it is that so many people have heat with him? I heard even Bobby Heenan was alleging that he had something to do with Bobby's WCW firing.
Well, I don't know about that. Even Shivani was upset with Bobby because Bobby would show up to broadcast, but in his water bottle wasn't water, it was vodka. So Bobby was doing too much of this. And Taylor's a good friend of mine. I mean, he's one of the finishing coaches at the WWE Performance Center. And if you look back at his career, he's very versatile. He could be the Red Rooster. He could be the guy with the first secretary in WCW. And now he's one of the head finishing coaches at the PC. And one of the reasons he got heat with some of the guys was he was the middleman. I mean, it wasn't, Vince or Triple H, or it wasn't Bischoff that went to the guy and said, hey, you got your 2-week notice. We're not renewing your contract, whatever. They tell Terry, go tell this guy his contract's not going to get renewed, or go tell this guy we're not going to sign him, or go tell, So Terry was like the middleman who wound up doing the dirty work for the guys he worked for. That's why he got some heat.
I heard Disco Inferno say that two guys in particular that seemed to really treat him like trash were Scott Steiner and Macho Man. Did you ever notice that?
You know what? I never really did. And one of the reasons is because during those days, I was doing the commentating. And I never hung out in the back room with the wrestlers. I was, walking around with Bobby and getting ready to do it. And everything me and Bobby did commentating on Nitro was ad-lib, strictly ad-lib. And I did the first half of the show, and then Bobby did the second half of the show. And what I would do, as soon as my hour and a half was done, Bobby would come in, I'd get in the rent-a-car, and I'd get the heck out of the building before the crowd left. And if there was a casino nearby, I'd go to the nearest casino and have some fun. Or I'd go to the hotel and get ready to fly back home in the morning. But back in those days with the broadcasting, I never hung out with the boys in the back room. So I don't know what was going on with Macho or, the other guys starting off. I forgot who you mentioned.
Scott Steiner supposedly threw a TV at him at one point.
Oh, well, I believe that. I mean, Scott was the guy that would have a short fuse and take no crap.
Deucin, all the way from Norway, says, speaking of Hall and demons, who would have been the one guy that had demons but still showed up and did his job well despite the demons?
Oh, God. I mean, unfortunately, there was a lot of great guys that are now long dead at a young age. And I don't even know what kind of demons they have. But you take a guy like Curt Hennig. Curt Hennig was great in the ring. He was a great talent. And he winds up ODing in his motel room. Eddie Guerrero was a great talent. I don't know if they had a demon or not, but they found him dead in the motel bathroom. I don't know why, not just the wrestlers, I don't know why human beings, especially young people, why are you doing drugs? I mean, when you're young, that's the best you're going to feel your whole life. Instead of blowing money on drugs, get yourself a sports car. I'm a private pilot. I flew little planes all over the country. Get yourself a pilot's license and fly around free as a bird over the rat race if you want to buzz. But for some reason, too many drugs got in the business, and it was finally the WWE, the great company that it is, that put its foot down and said, look, you're getting drug tested. If you test positive, you're gone. But if you had a problem, they would put you through rehab and the WWE would pay for it, whether you went 1 time or 10 times, because they wanted to help you. And there's more guys I can name, from Buzz Sawyer to Eddie Gilbert. And I just don't understand the thing about the drugs. I mean, I was lucky. I never drank my whole adult life. I couldn't smoke pot because if you inhale it, I cough so much I got a headache. I mean, I just was lucky, but I couldn't see the value in why do you want to do drugs? You're young and healthy. You look great. You're doing a great job. Why? I don't get it.
Now, I don't know if I know Knobs did recreational drugs here and there. That's pretty well documented. But there's a guy that's had numerous GoFundMes. He made a lot of money, seems to have health issue after health issue. What advice would you give a guy like that? I don't know if he's ever had a real job or not.
Yeah.
But like it just seems he does like autograph sessions, and when they run dry, let's ask the fans for money.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. I mean, I don't know if you go to the fans and say, "Hey, fans, I went broke because I blew all my money on drugs and didn't save any." But I don't again. I don't understand why they do that. And I don't know much about Brian Knobs personally. I knew him when he started, and he seemed to be a great guy. But I don't know if he was the kind of guy that worked out a lot and took, good, healthy care of himself. He didn't look like he was in super great shape. He was a big guy, but not like a big muscle guy, And then it's unfortunately, but a lot of these guys, you find out they had a problem after it was too late.
Yeah.
I heard something about Knobs recently. He may have to have a foot cut off or something.
I don't know what the update on it is, but apparently there's another GoFundMe available. I don't know why he doesn't ask his buddy Hogan for the money. I mean, he's under a WWE deal, just got this. Maybe, there's a good question. Did you hear about this Hulk Hogan autograph issues at New York signings over this past couple weeks? He's supposed to do autograph appearances to promote his new beer, but he was leaving early. Some of them where they said he was going to sign anything. He was only agreeing to sign beer cans. And other of these sessions, he just showed up and gave a speech and left, even though people were expecting autographs.
You know what, Hannibal? I still have a flip phone. I don't do social media. I don't tweet. I don't watch people dance around TikTok. I don't know what an Instagram is. I have a flip phone, and I just talk to human beings, friends, family. If I call the bank, it takes me 10 minutes to say customer service, customer service, customer service, until some stupid computer says, well, we'll put you through to a customer service. Thanks, idiot. Why don't you have a human being answer the phone? So I really don't know about what's happened. I didn't hear anything about the Hulk in New York. I didn't hear anything about really anything because like I said, I got a flip phone. I don't do social media. I got my friends, my grandkids, family. My dad's 95, still going. I was out with him last week. And I'm just kind of living happily ever after. And the one thing that's really exciting me, I'll say it again, is this opportunity to do Shoot Pro. Because, professional wrestling is an awesome show, awesome production, amazing athletes. Shoot Pro is an ancient, sport. It's an ancient, art and science of anatomy that's completely different. No one's going to be flipping off the rope with someone waiting to catch you. This is going to be the real deal. So I'm really excited about the Shoot Pro starting up. They filmed some stuff, and I'm not sure. I think Matt told me it's going to be starting on some new streaming thing called Trilla, Roku, something else. I think he mentioned you had a big platform. I'm not sure what a platform even is.
I think he's going to be sending some clips for here too.
Okay.
I think as far as platform, like we got 425,000 subscribers. So I
Oh,
guess
good.
some of it is going to air on this channel too.
Yeah,
So
but it's
that's
going to be completely different. And again, it's kind of the resurrection of an ancient sport that hasn't been seen for thousands of years. And I can't wait to, I can't wait to do it. This is going to be exciting for me. It's like
you,
career number 2.
you got lots of people in the comments popping that you have a flip phone, but I don't want to jump back into Hogan if you don't want to, but I'm just wondering your thoughts on him at this point. I don't know if it's his third or fourth marriage that he's
Oh,
into. He's back with WWE. He has a beer company. Apparently, they booed him on the first Raw, so they're not using him again. But let's ask you your thoughts on him getting booed on the
well,
Raw, and maybe why
again,
that would have happened.
I didn't see that, but from what I heard was, I mean, Hulk was out there campaigning for Trump. And I think the first Netflix Raw was in Los Angeles. So after campaigning for Trump, Hulk walks out in front of a liberal audience. And I think the audience booed the hell out of him, which they didn't expect because he was, supporting Trump and not the one that wants, all the crime, what Harris and Mayorkas and the Bidens, whatever. But so I think that's why he got booed from what I hear. But I'm not positive, but that's what someone told me, and it kind of makes sense.
Someone on here was asking, I don't know if they know that you were actually Greg Gagne's brother-in-law for a while, but they were wondering your thoughts on Greg Gagne. And by the way, for this woman that you married, Verne's daughter, is this the same one that Hulk Hogan claims that Verne was trying to set him up with?
No. I've never heard that. Number one, I mean, Kathy was married
It's
once
in his book.
before. Well, if it is, I mean, I don't read anybody's book, but no, Kathy was great, and it just worked out great. I mean, we had a great time. We got 2 great kids, 3 grandkids that are great. Everybody's healthy, and yes, I mean, I had a blessed life in a lot of ways, in a wild, crazy business.
And as far as Greg as a wrestler, a lot of people say he was actually underrated and people don't give him enough credit and that he
Well,
wasn't bad behind the scenes as
no,
far as coming up with the storylines and
yeah,
finishes.
he might have been underrated because in those days it was still really a bigger man business. And Greg wasn't a big guy. That's right, they teamed him up with Brunzell. But Greg was very, very good in the ring. I had some great matches with Greg, and it was a night off. But Greg was very good in the ring, easy to work with, no problems backstage that I ever ran into or noticed, you know. But Greg's okay. He did a good job. He just wasn't a big guy. You got Crusher Lazowski and Greg Gagne, in just different time.
Here's an interesting question. Your thoughts on the Renegade, who you had to commentate probably a few of his matches and the whole tragedy that happened there.
Renegade.
The
When he got
Ultimate
let
Warrior
go,
impersonator.
Renegade. What company was he with?
WCW. They had an Ultimate Warrior impersonator.
Called the Renegade?
Yes. And he
I don't
ended
know.
up, they tried to make him be like the Ultimate Warrior and almost in a way pretended that it may have been, but it ended up being a flop and he went on to kill himself,
Oh,
sadly.
God. To be honest with you, I don't know if I'm having a senior moment because I was in and out of the AWA a couple times, but I really don't remember a Renegade. To be honest with you, I hate to sound stupid, but I don't remember. I don't know how to. Well,
Yeah, it's only memorable because of how bad it was. And I'll put up a picture of him right now quickly. That might refresh your memory. Here it
The
is.
Renegade.
There it is.
I mean, he
Remember
looks
him?
kind of like Brutus Beefcakes without the scissors.
Yeah. I mean, Beefcake probably could have done that gimmick. Well,
Yeah.
what about the real Ultimate Warrior? When he had his cup of coffee in WCW, did you have any connection with him then?
You know what? I never really connected with him. I really don't remember meeting the guy. Like I said, in WCW, I didn't hang out with the boys. I was in the back hanging out with Bobby. And we had an easy job because we just went out and ad lib. But I never went through the dressing rooms. I never hung out with the guys because some of them were goofy, some of them were on dope. I mean, I didn't want to get involved in any of that drama. So I really don't know. The Renegade doesn't, because there was a lot of characters that came out of the blue for a while. Like now you watch TV, half the guys have masks like luchadors. It's to the point now where I don't know if it's Rey Mysterio or Alakazam or whoever. I mean, there's so many of them.
That's a good question. I mean, for AEW, for example, I've heard Dave Meltzer say they got between 180 to 200 wrestlers on their roster. They seem to be constantly hiring more and not really firing too many. What do you think about them? They have two shows, two 2-hour shows, and just basically collecting wrestlers, and there's not actually enough TV time to put them on TV to get them over. So you got all these wrestlers with maybe a handful of them that are over.
Maybe, I guess. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm still associated with the WWE, God bless them. And the PC's 5 miles down the road from my house in Terry. But I watch Raw Monday, most of it. And I'll check out Tuesday because NXT, I enjoy watching the newbies come up and see if I see anybody that's got potential to become a superstar. And then by the time Wednesday comes, now that's AEW. Then Friday you got SmackDown. Saturday another. It's to the point where wrestling's on like every day. So I really don't see much of AEW at all. It's kind of like Monday, okay, Tuesday, okay, Wednesday. I don't even know if I'm home Wednesday night. I might go see my grandkid. So I really don't watch a lot of AEW. I do notice when I click on some time that the guys they seem to be pushing that are stars are guys that have been around a while. I know Edge or the Rated R Superstar and Jericho and Christian and Billy Gunn. And you get some guys that have been around a while, because there's a whole bunch of new guys and I have no idea who they are.
And there's a lot of people there making millions and millions and millions of dollars and hardly at all having to wrestle. So
I wish it was me.
Yeah, I wish it was me too. Here's a question. Did you ever wrestle Abdullah the Butcher? And what do you think of him in recent years alleging that he doesn't know how to read, which a lot of people have disputed?
Well, I don't remember wrestling Abdullah. Because back in those days when Abby came around and I did the Bruno thing, I was a bad guy. People hated me. And Abdullah was a bad guy. So bad guys never wrestled each other. But I knew Abby, and he was a smart guy. So there's no doubt in my mind Abby could read. Just, that's my vote. But he was a smart guy, Abby, and I'm sure he could read no problem.
Was he one of the better dressed wrestlers? Because you always hear that he dressed in suits and alligator shoes and gold rings.
One time I was just starting out in 73. I picked Abdullah the Butcher up at some hotel in Pittsburgh, and we drove to like Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And I just started. And Abby's sitting next to me, and we pull up to the parking lot. There's some fans, and here's what Abby says to me. He says, "Okay, kid, let me teach you something now. When a star shows up, you got to let the fans know you're a star. So here's what you do. First, you push the door open, and on your finger are big gold rings, which look like, they're worth a lot of money. And then you put your one foot out, so your big, expensive leather shoe or leather boot, whatever it is, that comes out. And then you come out the rest of your body, and you got the big gold watch on. And then, so he was telling me how to come out and look like a star. You got to have the phony rings, the phony watches, the boot. But you got to do that in front of the fans so they see you and go, oh, look at this guy. He is a star. Wow. You don't want to come out looking like a slob. So, yeah, Abby, Abby was a smart guy. And he, at the time, he was a unique character.
I'll agree with Peter here. I think you and Arn was actually better than Tully and Arn, in my opinion. I liked you guys better. Peter says you and Arn were his favorite tag team in WCW. Do you think they could have done more with you guys, the Enforcers?
Yeah, we could have. Me and Arn clicked. I was starting to get close to 40. Arn was over, but Arn was great in the ring. He had a great look. And when me and Arn walked out as the Enforcers, even in the days with the mid to later 80s, when the Heat and the Dirt Sheets came out and the business was changing, me and Arn would walk out and the crowd would still have that boo and really mean it. The Enforcers were over. We could have gone longer, but Bill Watts came in to run the TBS company for a while, and he messed everything up. And that's how I lucked out and wound up being a broadcaster for 10 years, because I pulled myself out of the group, The Dangerous Alliance. But me and Arn could have went on longer. Me and Arn were over. Arn was great.
That Dangerous Alliance time, personally, too, I think that was Paul Heyman's best manager run, because now it seems it's very repetitive. And I know you're with WWE, and I'm not insulting them or anything, but he talks for too long, and it seems like, oh, my name is Paul Heyman. It's the same thing every time. But when he was managing you guys, it just seemed more off the cuff, and it wasn't as dragged out as it was.
You know what? When I watch TV, everybody talks too long. The beginning of every show, they got the big music and someone's walking down the ramp. Takes them 5 minutes to get to the ring. They got a microphone and they stand there and they talk for 10 minutes. Some history lesson where they used to be friends with somebody. Everybody was friends. And then, of course, after 10 minutes of them talking, someone else's music plays. And they walk down the ramp, and they've got a microphone. And they get in the ring and stand there, and they talk for another 5 minutes. There's really too much talking as far as I'm concerned. It's just, we did interviews in the old days, maybe 2 minutes was the longest. Because it gets too boring. I couldn't, it's too much talking.
And for me, as someone that's been in fights, it's like, if I have a problem with someone, I'm not just going to stand there talking to them for 20 minutes. At some point, I'm going to attack them. And
you stand there and like an idiot while he makes fun of you for 10 minutes. And then someone else will walk in and they'll have a microphone. And all of a sudden you'll hear, well, we have an impromptu 3-way. Why? Didn't anybody book any matches for the show? How can you have it anyway? It's. I wish it was a little different.
And this happens in all the companies. And this is just one thing why I'd rather watch one of your AWA matches than a current match. When somebody interferes now, their Titantron will play first. And that happens in all the companies, not just WWE. But it's like, this is supposed to be surprise interference. And like, you have a full entrance. How am I supposed to suspend my disbelief for that?
You know what? One signing show, one of the fans came up to me and said, hey, Larry, in the back room before you come out of the entrance, is there a big board with everybody's name on it? And next to the name, there's like a button to push. So if you want to walk out in the ring and interfere, then you push the button next to your name and it starts your music. I went, no, there's no big, but that's what the fans are. The fans are trying to make sense out of what's going on because the fans love it and they want to pretend in it so bad, but you just got to make it easy to pretend in. These slaps, these slaps,
The leg slapped when you kick. I mean, that secret's out of the bag. We all know it now.
If you're in a real fight, are you going to slap a guy? Just duh.
Well, I think the origin of the chop was because originally you weren't supposed to be able to punch your opponent, but now it seems like they've dropped the rule where you can't punch somebody.
Oh, yeah, not punching 10 times, and then they throw them in, but get reversed because 10 punches mean nothing. And then, it's just every match. Yeah. And again, you got amazing athletes, and they run up and back, and they'll dive on the top, and they'll backflip in midair and crash through the announcer's desk. And they're doing amazing high-risk things, and the fans appreciate it and love it. But it's just a lot of it. It's a lot of the same. And it's hard to make us, a big superstar when everybody's the same.
There's a lot of fan questions on here. I'll put up a couple more here. Does Arn Anderson exaggerate his Larry stories? One of them, which the crowd was chanting, "Larry sucks," causing you to not want to get back into the match until Arn said, "Larry, I mean it."
Well, it was kind of close. But the one thing I had that I stole the psychology from the old school was even in the mid to late 80s when Heat was changing, Heat was going away and the cheat sheets were out and all this, I could get in the ring and stand there, and all of a sudden the whole crowd's chanting, "Larry sucks, Larry sucks." And I wouldn't just stand there. I'd jump down to the announce desk and complain, and I'd jump back in, and they'd be chanting, "Larry sucks." And then I'd jump on the apron and point to somebody and pick on them, and I'd jump in, and they go, "Larry sucks." So the crowd was going nuts. If I would have started a wrestling match, then they would have all got quiet. So I was giving the fans what they wanted to do. In some shows, it would last 5 minutes, some shows 10 minutes. My record is 16 minutes before contact of "Larry sucks." So one time, me and Arn were wrestling at some military base outside, a tag match, and I get in the ring, and the whole crowd is chanting, "Larry sucks, Larry sucks." And I'm doing my thing, which I think one of the cheat sheet guys labeled as I invented stalling. It wasn't stalling. The crowd was going nuts. So I'm in the ring kind of moving around, but really not doing much. And the crowd's chanting, "Larry sucks." And Arn is losing his mind. Arn yells out, he says, "Do something." And I said, "Arn, they're chanting, 'Larry sucks.'" And Arn said, "But they really mean it." Yeah, I'll never forget that. Arn was a witty guy. He was a fun guy. Used to love to travel with Arn.
That's hilarious. There was another fan question on here. You're the only person to insult a mafia don and live. The legendary. Could you tell us this? Because I never heard of this. Carlo Gambino.
Well, we were wrestling in the Madison Square Garden, and Frank Sinatra was in town. I think Madison Square Garden was Monday. It might have been Sunday. Frank did a big show at Madison Square Garden. I think I got the CD of it. And Jilly Rizzo was Frank Sinatra's right-hand man. And he had a little club downtown New York City called Jilly's. And Frank Sinatra and Bruno knew each other. And all the Italians loved Bruno because everybody loved him, and it was good for the Italian people in New York. So Frank Sinatra sent a message and asked if Bruno could come over. Frank would like to meet him and say hi and see him again. So Bruno went, "Okay, great, we'll go over and see Frank." So me, Tony Parisi, Dominic DeNucci, and Bruno went off to Jilly's to meet Frank Sinatra. And I got the chance to, but he was in the back room, and Bruno went to the back room with some people. And I was standing out there, and I met Frank for about 5 seconds when he was walking out. And right after he left, there was a small group of people, and there was, in front of him was a little old guy, looked like a skeleton in a suit. And he was walking by, and in his hand, and he's got an empty roll of toilet paper. That brown empty roll after the toilet paper's gone. This little old man is holding it, And on one end, matchsticks are taped around the end of the toilet paper roll. And he comes up to me, and this is the era of the Polish joke. Everything was a Polish joke. And he came up to me and he says, "Do you know what this is?" And I said, "No." And he says, "This is a Polish flashlight." And everybody laughs. So me, the idiot Polak, I said, "Well, you know why Italians don't have freckles? They slide off their face." Nobody laughed. And Bruno's behind him at the bar, and he's going, like, "Shut up, you idiot." So no one laughs. They leave. I go to Bruno. I says, "Well, what was this?" And he said, "Do you know who that little old guy was you told that joke to?" And I went, "No." He said, "That was Carlo Gambino, the Godfather, the one they made the movie about." And I went, I guess the FBI got a good picture of me coming out of Jilly's that night. But I told the Godfather an Italian joke and lived.
For Bruno, I don't know if you could comment on this or not, but it's out there from a lot of people that he would actually wear a hairpiece to look younger because that was important. You mentioned how important the look is of a wrestler.
Yeah.
Could you confirm or deny that?
Oh, yeah. Well, Bruno did. I mean, he was still getting in his later years, but still, still the big star. And he was starting to go bald, so he got a weave job. When the weaves came out, they'd weave it on your hair because just like Abby had his, the old school, and Bruno's thing was you want to look as good as you can and as young as you can and as fit as you can because that makes it easy for the fans to believe in you. You want to make it easy for them to get into it. Just like I was saying about today, they want to pretend, make it easy. So Bruno did have a hair weave piece, and if you touched it and pulled it, it really ticked him off. So we stayed away from the hairdo.
Yeah, and I mean, and I don't want to say anything bad about WWE here or The Rock, because I'm sure it's The Rock's call. But speaking of wanting to make it easy to believe, when they recently had that John Cena heel turn on the same YouTube channel that showed the heel turn, half an hour later, they had The Rock at a press conference talking about how they did this heel turn and how great it was. So it's just like, I want to believe, but you're making it very hard. Well, this is on the same channel.
Yeah, well, you get a different audience, and I mean, God bless them. Wrestling fans are the greatest fans. They love it, and they, in WWE, the great company it is, but the production's awesome. To sit back on your couch and watch 2 hours of Raw and SmackDown. I mean, it's an amazing production. You got a ring full of amazing athletes, and they're doing amazing things. So it's really an amazing show, and people know what it is, and they appreciate how athletic these guys are and these women and the high risk they're taking. I'm surprised more of them aren't hurt because they're crashing through tables and steel chairs. And if you're off 6 inches, you're going to break your neck. So, I mean, it's really a super entertaining show to watch. But don't tell people what's going on. Let them enjoy it.
Yeah, at least wait for the angle to be over. To me, like, it just makes it simpler. But
yeah, don't tell them it's an angle. Let them get into it and have fun.
Someone on here wants to know your thoughts on Colonel DeBeers, who passed away about a month or so ago.
Oh, dude, he was a month ago? Yeah. He was a smooth character. I mean, I knew him in the AWA, and he was a nice guy. I mean, we traveled a little bit together, not too much, because I flew little planes all over, and a lot of the guys wouldn't come with me because they were afraid they'd crash. But I'll tell you a funny story about DeBeers, because we would film television for ESPN in Las Vegas. Every 3 weeks or something, we'd go there and film, some shows for ESPN. And one match, Colonel DeBeers is wrestling Kerry Von Erich. And in those days, Kerry didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew that Kerry lost his foot in a motorcycle accident. He had special boot made. He'd shower with a boot, go to the beach with the boots on. No one knew he was missing a foot. So DeBeers and Carey are having a match in the ring on TV, filming it. And DeBeers puts an ankle lock on him and pulls up on it. And all of a sudden, pop, the boot comes off. And Kerry Von Erich is laying on his back with the legs sticking up. And right after the knee, it just goes up and disappears and turns into like this little pointy stump. And DeBeers is holding this boot and he goes, "Ah!" And it scared the hell out of him because he didn't know what happened when I pulled this guy's foot off. And the crowd went dead silent. It was like no one could fathom what they saw. Kerry grabbed his boot, rolled out of the ring, rolled under the ring, disappeared for a minute. Crowd is still dead silent. DeBeers is standing there like, what the hell? And then Kerry comes back into the ring with his boot back on and starts wrestling again like nothing happened. And it was one of the most weirdest things I've ever seen in the business.
Interesting. Did you ever witness any of Kerry's showing up intoxicated that is kind of around in the wrestling folklore now?
No, I really never did. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, I kind of did my own thing. I never hung around with a lot of the guys. I never went to bars after the show. I wasn't into what a lot of them were into. And like I said, I flew planes. So instead of going to the hotel, I go to the plane and fly home. I'd be home in an hour and a half instead of a 6-hour drive. But I really didn't know Kerry much really at all.
I heard you used to drive with Andre sometimes. How did you avoid the bars when you were with him?
Well, I didn't go to bars, but Andre would be in a room with some other guys, and they'd have, bottles on ice. And Andre was a character. He was a good guy. I mean, we traveled a little bit together, but not too much because he really had a hard time. He had to have a special car to drive into the arenas because he was like too big to get in most of the cars. So they had a driver for him. And I knew him, but I never really hung out with him a lot. And, I didn't drink or go to bars because you go to the bars, the guys are drinking, and there's always somebody that comes up and say, "Hey, are you one of them wrestler guys? Ha ha." Well, boom, a fight will break out almost every time. So I just stayed away from all that.
For Andre, you hear a lot of people, some people say he was a bully, some people say he was cranky, and then other people say, oh, he's a friendly, lovable giant. Is there really just two sides to him that depends on what side you're on?
I never saw Andre cranky. I mean, I didn't see him a whole bunch, but we'd fly up and back to Japan, or in Japan, we'd be on the bullet train together going to a town, and me and Andre would play cribbage the whole time. But I never noticed Andre being cranky or difficult. I never seen him yelling or anything at anybody,
I interviewed a reporter / photographer female from Allentown that said maybe she just caught him on a bad day, but she tried to get a picture of him once when he was checking into a hotel for her newspaper, and I guess he blew up on her. But I mean, that could happen with anybody.
Well, I mean, it could, because you never know. Sometimes on the road, you go through hell. And like I said, it wasn't easy for Andre to get around. He could have been in some car for 4 hours, and by the time he got out, he could be hurting all over and just want to go to bed. And, oh, God, no, not one more person. Please leave me alone. But it wasn't an easy life with all the traveling, especially for a guy like Andre his size.
Now, you're a good question to ask about this because you got a lot of legitimate sellouts in the days long before the tarp was used, and a lot of companies now use tarp. And I think when you were selling out Madison Square Garden, I think it was 23,000, but now sometimes they'll say it was sold out 12,000 something, or they'll go to like Oakland with, and I'm talking about AEW here because I think they did this a few weeks ago. They only had 3,000 people in a 20,000 seat building, but because they tarped off so much, they're like sold out for the setup. They never did that before, did they?
We never had that in the old days. In fact, me and Bruno wrestled in Madison Square Garden a few times building up to Shea Stadium. But there was never a tarp, and I'm not sure exactly what they hold, but we sold it out with like 22, 23,000 people every time. In fact, not just the Garden, too many people showed up. The Garden was sold out, and we also sold out the Felt Forum, which is underneath the Garden that held another 5,000 people. So we didn't use tarps, but you can notice on some TV shows, you see a couple rows and everything in the background is blacked out because all the seats are empty.
Yeah, and now they'll do, like, I think they did NXT in the Felt Forum the other night, and that was just a separate show of its own in the Felt Forum. You have a lot of fans on here that love you, by the way. G Michael says, what are your memories and insights of the 70s Pittsburgh wrestling scene? It's an overlooked part of the history of the territories.
Well, that's where I was born in Chicago, and I think I moved to Pittsburgh when I started 8th grade. That's the first time I saw pro wrestling on TV. Of course, then Bruno became my hero. He had Chili Billy Cardilli. And that's when I got into wrestling, was in Pittsburgh watching studio wrestling. And, that could have been happening in a lot of cities across the country because those were the days of the territories and local TV. But Pittsburgh and that area did great because that was like Bruno's hometown. So he'd be at all the shows. And I mean, I don't know how to say this, but in complete honesty, no one's going to be more beloved, truly beloved in this business than Bruno was. When Bruno started bleeding and fell to the mat, people in the audience had heart attacks. Some died. It became a bad joke. Bruno, you're killing our audience. But that's how much they really loved the man. He was the story of the American dream. An immigrant kid that came over, his mother was shot in the leg, bringing him and his brother over, his kids from the Nazis, during World War II. And when he got here, he almost died from malnutrition. And he wound up becoming such a gorilla. But he really achieved what America has to offer, the American dream.
I just looked it up while you were answering that. The one Madison Square Garden when Billy Graham was champion, he had 19 out of 20 sellouts. The sellouts back then was over 22,100. The one that he didn't sell out was 17,914, which now would be considered a sellout if you want to include the quote-unquote setup.
Yeah, setup. And they got so much stuff now. I mean, in Shea Stadium, there was like 44,000 or so, but they turned away 6,000 people because the stadium wouldn't let the promoter put chairs on the infield because they thought the chairs would dig into the, infield, the grass and the sand and wreck the whole baseball stadium ground. So they actually turned thousands of people away from Shea Stadium.
For Billy Graham's title reign that I just asked, which was right around your time, because I know you had matches with Backlund after he won the title, do you think it was a mistake not turning Graham babyface when he had so much heat at that time, and then they kind of went to just going with Backlund, who didn't have the momentum of a Billy Graham, and there was other people around that in theory would have been possibly more over than Backlund, but they wanted to go with Backlund.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the thing is, but for some reason, Vince McMahon Sr. liked Backlund. He looked at him as the all-American boy. Even Gorilla Monsoon, Strongbow, they used to all call him Howdy Doody. But after Bruno retired, Bob Backlund just wasn't the guy that could fill Bruno's boots and be the new guy. And nothing against Bob, but nobody could have really filled Bruno's boots. Billy Graham had a great look. There was a guy there that might have had a chance because those were the days of the big powerhouses. Ken Patera, who was an Olympic, power lifter, gold medal winner, had a great background. He was an athletic guy that looked, like a 290-pound, kick your ass kind of guy. But it was hard to find somebody. Bob Backlund just couldn't follow Bruno. I mean, the wrestling fans were very disappointed. They just wouldn't buy him. He just didn't look the part. He couldn't do it.
Well, last question here, since you bring up Ken Patera, who's very popular on this channel. I heard you the last interview tell me about the whole McDonald's incident, but could you tell us any other stories about Ken? Because he's a pretty crazy and entertaining guy in general that might not be out there.
I'm trying to think. I mean, me and Ken were kind of close for a while, because we were all over the place, different territories. But I really don't have any, unless I'm having a senior moment, I really can't think of any Ken Patera particular stories, only other than that bad one that happened with the stupid McDonald's.
Yeah.
And that really screwed Saito over because he had no idea what was going on. But me and Ken got along great. I mean, but I really don't give any stories. But I think Ken might have been someone that might have had a chance after the Bruno run because he was big. Ken versus Billy Graham would have been a hell of a match because they were both big and blah, blah, blah.
Is it true you dated Missy Hyatt before she dated Jake? A fan wanted to know that.
Well, I didn't date Missy Hyatt. Like, we didn't go out like dates. But I met her, I think, when I was in Atlanta, and she showed up, and she wanted to get in the wrestling business. And she was there in town and had a couple of days off. One time we went to Six Flags to ride the rides of Six Flags over Atlanta. One night, she talked me into going to some restaurant club, but she drank too much and puked in her car. So I had to drive her car back to the hotel. But we never dated or, because I think a couple weeks after I met her, I left that little Atlanta territory and went somewhere else. But I knew Missy when she was coming around, a hot-looking chick, cool chick. But we never dated or went out or nothing.
Yeah, it came out recently that I guess her and Jim Ross were an item in more recent years. You needed some comfort.
I have a flip phone. I don't do social media.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with anybody, and I don't care.
Well, we'll have you on again, hopefully soon, and I'll keep filling you in on this stuff, all the gossip. But where you got Shoot Pro with the King of Connecticut. More information is coming out on that soon. I understand there's a bunch of matches in the can.
Yeah,
that you guys are going to be commentating soon.
Yeah, they filmed some matches in Las Vegas, and they're going to be filming more. And I'm really excited about it because it's really where wrestling came from, martial arts. I mean, it's an ancient sport, thousands of years old. Like I said, ancient Egyptians. And it was the Roman Empire that turned it into the brutal, bone-breaking, neck-cracking, shoulder-popping. And it's going to be different. I'm really excited about it. And they got 2 TV deals now, one with Roku, one with Trilla, something starting up, and there's going to be more. And I just can't wait. And I think once the fans watch it, and they'll see the difference, because there's no ropes. No one's going to be flipping off the ropes, getting caught. But they're going to look at these guys and go, oh my God, he just broke his arm. I mean, it's going to be good.
Very good, sir. Well, I really appreciate having you on, and the fan reaction was good. And I hope we can have you on again soon.
Enjoyed it. I mean, after Shoot Pro gets going here, you want me on, we'll talk about whatever you want, Hannibal. Let me know, brother.
Excellent, sir. Well, nobody can close this off better than you, so I'll let you give the fans a message to wrap this up.
Well, to everybody, enjoy life experience. We're We're here in eternal consciousness in a temporary vehicle called the body. And God, everybody have a great life, and everybody should just remember we're all one race, the human race on this beautiful living planet. So let's enjoy it, and then we'll all go to heaven happily ever after. So